Welcome to Sports and Crypto. I'm your host, Ryan Cannon. On this program, I'll talk to industry leaders sitting at the intersection of sports and crypto to break down what is currently happening, identify trends, and delve into what they believe the future has in store for all of us. We'll hear about their career journeys, their lives, and we'll touch on some of their passions. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. Andy Odenbach, co-founder of Toquidity, a blockchain company that's unlocking value through asset tokenization. And maybe more importantly for me anyway, to episode number 1, if you will, of Sports and Crypto, your close friend, professional mentor. I've known you a long, long time. You are, hands down, you're the person that turned me on to the whole crypto space. You initiated the crypto red pill for me and has gotten me to this point. But before we get into kind of that whole journey and the twists and turns along the way, I'd love to hear about, what you're working on personally right now. Like, help us understand what is Toquidity.
Yeah, Ryan, listen, great to be here. Episode number 1. I am truly, truly honored. Forget being a mentor. We've been friends for 20 plus years. And when we worked together, I'll never forget, no one pushed me harder than you did, even though, technically I wore a different hat and a different title. It didn't matter. I mean, there were so many times when we were working for the PGA and you're like, hey, we can't take no. You got to go back. You got to try harder. You know what we need to do? I mean, you would crack the whip on me every bit as much as I would crack it on anybody else. And I'm really appreciative because you push me professionally. You push me to be better professionally. And, it's a lot of fun to be here with you today to talk about the crypto journey, to talk about Toquidity. I know that's what you asked right out of the gate, but so Toquidity, was a company that I started with a friend of a friend here in Orlando, partner, almost a year ago. He is a engineer by trade, helped dot-coms get started in the late 90s working for Accenture. Long story short, he got into Bitcoin in 2013. He got into Ethereum in 2017, self-educated him on the entire blockchain smart contract space. And I was struggling. I was actually working for a family office, a short stint. I did a longer stint with a different family office. We'll come back to that in a little bit. But this family office was not very good at putting together their capital stack when it came to closing on real estate transactions. And I just felt like with enough time, they could have digitized the offering. They could have used a security token with their syndicated group of investors. It would have allowed those investors to trade amongst themselves during a lockup period. And then ultimately, that security token could trade on an exchange long before the real estate project was ever actually delivered. Now, I, not being a technologist by trade, needed to go to the one person, my current business partner, and get a better understanding. And when we sat down and we had a cup of coffee and we kind of spent, more days together and more evenings together, we realized there was a big blue ocean opportunity. And what Toquidity does is we help owners of businesses and assets, highly illiquid businesses and assets. So think cannabis farm, think t-shirt company, think office building, think hotels. And we help them fractionalize it, create liquidity for those owners so that they can redeploy that capital elsewhere, do some estate planning, do whatever they want with it. And now people like you and I, who never historically were able to own a piece of that cannabis farm, that t-shirt company, that office building, or that hotel, are now actual owners of those assets. So again, that's the long way of saying what Toquidity does based on my short time with my partner.
Yeah, it's super interesting, Andy. Within all of this, I personally feel a little bit like Bambi on ice, right?
We all are.
You talked about you weren't a technologist, and yet here you find yourself co-founder of a blockchain technology company. When we both started back, into sports, neither one of us at the time, it was kind of new for everyone to wade into running major championships kind of at that level. What do how do you explain that? How do you explain in overcoming kind of the self-doubt to where you now have gotten to this place where, all right, I'm going to do this deep dive into the tokenization, into blockchain, and into that landscape. and then ultimately kind of create a venture to go pursue it. Like, where does that kind of motivation come from to get to that place that I'm Bambi on ice right now, but one day, I'm going to be Usain Bolt in this field. Like, how do you like touch on that for just a minute? Because I want to, where I want to go with this is something you commented on was, I was pushing you and you were pushing me, and it was like, because of that, I think we both got better at what we were doing. We continued to push the boundaries and develop just as professionals. And so I'm just curious as to how that all came about. Where does that kind of confidence, the humility, where does that come from to push you into the space like this?
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, for me, I knew I wasn't going to be working for this particular family office for a long period of time. Just the way things were transacting, the way they were conducting business, and I felt that the great news about blockchain and cryptocurrencies and all the stuff we're going to talk about today is nobody's got decades of experience, right? Let's be clear. I mean, the white paper for Bitcoin was written in 2008. People for the first, I don't know, 6, 7, 8 years just said this isn't anything real. This is all fake. This is fictitious. And I think what we can all agree on is the underpinnings of this technology is going nowhere. This thing is going to be put on the fast track, no different than any other major changes that we've gone through in human history, right? Think about when the car first came out, all the stagecoach companies, got together and lobbied. And if you had a car in the very, very, very early days, you actually had to have a person out in front of the car with a red flag, because people thought it was going to be a deathmobile. When planes came out, the railroads like rallied and they put fake stories in newspapers about how it's suicide to get in an airplane because they didn't want the airplane to succeed. So you then move on through time, you see this history pattern repeat itself again. When the internet first came out, when email first came out, people are like, oh, I don't need this. This isn't going to do anything. Oh, all you can do is send a message. That's what the mail's for. It's like, no. It was just the beginning, right? And that's where we are again. We if we're looking at the future of finance, or we're looking at the future of the utility of blockchain and smart contracts, I mean, if it's a 9-inning baseball game, like the pitcher's barely gotten the mound to start warming up for the game. I mean, that is just how early it is. And I felt like this is where everything's going. I want to be a part of where everything's going. So I might be a couple years behind, but again, in the history of time, what's a couple years? It's nothing. It's a nanosecond. Like, get educated, get smart, figure this out. How can you help other people figure it out? And that's really, what Toquidity does. But every day for me, just like you, it's Bambi on ice. I mean, we're learning as fast as we can.
Yeah, as in that process of discovery, I mean, I know you well enough, Andy, that it's just innate. It's inside you that you're kind of looking around the corner always. You have your head up, looking out to the horizon. Was there something, along the way that really helped turn the light bulb on in your head of like, yeah, this is the thing? Was it a book you read? Was it something you'd listened to? I know you've mentioned some books like The Price of Tomorrow and Kings of Crypto, things like that. I mean, was there, and I'm sure it was accumulation of a lot of different areas, but as you reflect on that moment of I'm going all in here, was there any one thing in particular that kind of led you to make that bet?
Well, I would say a number of topics to cover there, but interestingly enough, I had some friends get in much earlier than I did into crypto from a digital asset investing standpoint. I didn't actually take the plunge until 2020. I had friends that were getting in 20. Heck, I got friends that got in 2013, 2014. I guess you could call me a naysayer back then in terms of, the utility and the value and the opportunity.
Yeah, what is that thing? I keep hearing this. I keep hearing Bitcoin, but what I don't get it. Anything that's still being valued in dollars, I guess that's not going to be relevant.
Yeah. Well, listen, as fast as we print money, like, what's a dollar worth? Oh, I don't understand why there's inflation. Well, 40% of the entire supply of money in the United States of America has been printed in the last 4 years. I mean, come on. I mean, anyways, that's a different rabbit hole. I guess you're saying to me, really what turned me on, or were there some books? I look at I look at incredible investors like Stanley Druckenmiller and Paul Tudor Jones and these guys that have been successful for decades on Wall Street. And when they said you should be allocating, 1 to 3, 2 to 4, 3 to 5% of your portfolio to digital assets, whether it's Bitcoin, Ethereum, and other opportunities in a blended, basket thereof, they're saying this asset class is important and we're investing in it. And one of the things I also found profound was that during, crypto winter, after it ran, as aggressively as it did in December of 17, and then, bottomed out in early 18, 85% of the people that own Bitcoin didn't sell their Bitcoin. So you have the people that believe that long term that this is the future. Now, my partner Lee would not go into business with me without me reading books. And you mentioned Kings of Crypto. He didn't mention that one. That's a fun one though. My kids, actually, my son has read it, loved it. Now and by the way, he's 18. My daughter, who's 17, is about to start reading it. It's about Coinbase and Brian Armstrong in the early days and the starting of that company and how they were able to assemble the team that they did. If you have not read a single book on, digital assets or cryptocurrencies, Kings of Crypto is a really fun place to start. You mentioned The Price of Tomorrow by Jeff Booth. Has a lot to do with technology as much as it does digital assets. Another great book. Those are both very easy reads. Now, Lee, again, he's been in the space for a very long time. There's the Bitcoin Standard. There is Layered Money. There is The Sovereign Individual. There is The Fourth Turning. I mean, there's a number of books that I have read that have been more enlightening about the history of money and how we got to where we are versus pure blockchain or pure cryptocurrency. But they're all winners for sure. Some are just easier to absorb right out of the gate.
Yeah, the topic of one of the things that at the outset where I started to go deep on, and it's a fascinating subject that I think really helps bring some of this into focus, is studying just the history of money. When you really kind of peel back the layers of the onion on what exactly is money, and then you start stacking up the attributes of what perfect money looks like. Bitcoin makes a really strong case for that. So it's just fascinating to see kind of that evolution of some of the macro factors you mentioned, the storytelling, the individuals, all of which I think you see because you are it's just innate in you to look around the corner, to do some contingency planning, and try to ready yourself for what's coming down the pipeline. Kind of to that end, I want to back up for a minute, though, and kind of peel off the blockchain crypto ecosystem and come back to kind of your roots in sports entertainment. Sure. Because, those attributes of the contingency planning, I think they come into play here and served you well through what was an incredible career, in sports entertainment. Bring us back to kind of Andy Odenbach right out of college. and talk about how you got into sports and go from there.
Well, I was very, very fortunate. I was very persistent. I graduated from Colorado State with a degree in accounting. I didn't want to be an accountant. I loved the game of golf. I wasn't a good golfer. I had no experience. I wasn't a sports management major. I started writing letters to the PGA Tour and USGA, American Junior Golf Association. They all told me to fly a kite for the reasons I just mentioned. The PGA of America wrote back and said, well, our tournament directors have the autonomy to hire interns if they want to. And I was like, well, that's not a no. And I basically wore out the tournament director at the 1996 PGA Championship. I was having professors from school send her letters of reference. I had my cousin who's in Chicago that knew her through a friend of a friend reach out to her. And she basically said, stop. Just stop. I got a full-time job. I'm getting information on you every single week. And by the way, this is like beginnings of email, right? So she said, stop in a nice way. She basically said, I'll tell you what, you come out here, you work for me for 2 weeks. If you can't cut it, then I'm going to send you back to Colorado. But if not, you can work with me for the rest of the summer here on the 1996 PGA Championship. And that was the beginning of a 9-year run with the PGA of America, 6 cities in 9 years. Served as a tournament director for both the PGA Championship and the Ryder Cup. Had the great opportunity of meeting you in 2000. I was without an operations manager, and you fit the bill perfectly. And then, we went running up to Detroit to do the 2004 Ryder Cup, where we pushed the envelope in every which way we could. I think we, meaning the United States of America, would have had a better chance winning that Ryder Cup if we were captain and co-captain of that team. We got our rears kicked by the Europeans. I still look back and go, we spent 3 years of our life to get absolutely smoked by the Europeans. I mean, the Americans didn't even show up to play in that Ryder Cup. Oh, still gutted that we had to go through that from an on-course experience. But again, back to me, I loved it. But at the end of the day, once you do a couple PGAs and a couple Ryder Cups, it's like, what's next? And I really wanted to get into real estate and development. I loved sports, I loved golf, but I didn't want to be a golf tournament guy for the rest of my life. And I was fortunate enough to be introduced to the Tavistock Group, a private investment company out of Orlando, Florida. Single source of capital, a gentleman by the name of Joe Lewis, one of the most successful global FX traders on the planet, multi-billionaire, but he had 2 great golf communities here in Central Florida, Isleworth and Lake Nona. And this is where some of the best professionals in the world live. I mean, it's where Tiger won all his majors being a member and resident at Isleworth. You have Annika Sorenstam and Justin Rose and Ian Poulter and a big contingency over at Lake Nona. And so I got to work with Joe and the Tavistock Group for 15 years. They wanted my golf expertise, and they allowed me to get into real estate and development. And there's a part of the Lake Nona ecosystem includes 14,000 acres, and that's where I got to cut my teeth on everything that was non-golf related, running businesses for them, running business development for them, bringing in, entities like the United States Tennis Association, leveraging my sports background to bring in the governing body of tennis to Lake Nona and build out a 100-court, 60-acre campus known as the home of American tennis. So, I mean, it was a tremendous run with Tavistock for the 15 years that I was with them. And that's why Orlando's home. And that's how the sports entertainment allowed me to transition into, ultimately real estate and development, which has now allowed me to transition into Toquidity and the opportunity that we're now bringing to business owners and real estate developers, candidly.
Yeah, it's such an incredible progression there, just professionally. The work you did with Tavistock, with the Tavistock Cup, and then stewarding Lake Nona from what it was into what it is today. The whole entire property is just an amazing accomplishment, and fascinating too as to how that's kind of led you to where you are today. And back, you'd mentioned 2000 and the 2001 PGA Championship, and prior to that, you were literally writing letters to the championship director of the '96 PGA. I'll never forget when you started, or when I started. My office was and my desk was literally a kitchen table, and you said, here's a phone and here's a phone book, and you have dial-up internet access, and in 8 months from now a major championship's going to happen, and good luck. And it was like, away we go. And it was really, Andy, that I've kind of talked about this and made the analogy that, you've heard the expression being thrown in the deep end of the pool, and, that's how you learn to swim. This was more like, getting thrown off the top of a building and being expected to learn how to fly. It was, just an unbelievable experience, but it was really your leadership, your mentorship. It's what gave me the confidence to press forward. We will figure this out. We will host and conduct, a major championship in every way imaginable. And it allowed me to move forward then into the Ryder Cup, which today is arguably, certainly one of the biggest events in all of sports, and by all accounts is the most impactful event in the game of golf. And to be able to do that literally as the second really big event that I'd ever worked on in my life, it's just, I think, a testament, to your leadership, Again, that your innate sense of kind of looking around the corner and being prepared for whatever it is to come. And you instilled that in all of us. So remarkable journey. But I want to kind of take this to where you obviously have lots of insights in the world of sports. And now you have developed this incredible knowledge and an ever growing, expanding knowledge around blockchain technology. Where do you see kind of as you look ahead, like what's interesting to you at the intersection of those two worlds where sports and crypto are coming together as you're looking at that? What's interesting to your eye?
Well, there's a lot of things that are interesting to my eye. There's a lot of things that are being tested right now, and ultimately how much attraction and network effect is going to be created from some of those early testing scenarios. And by that, I mean we can talk about fan tokens. We can talk about NFTs. I look at, the future of ticketing itself. NFTs will be issued, and because it's utilizing blockchain technology, the issuer or the team, I think Mark Cuban's talked about this a lot at the Dallas Mavericks. It's like, wait, we're selling our tickets to our season ticket holder, who then is potentially putting them on StubHub or selling them to a broker. And that ticket may move 3, 4, 5 times. And the value may go up and down as it moves through its progression. But the Dallas Mavericks are only making money once, the first time it sold to the season ticket holder. And now with the technology, every time that ticket is retraded, a percentage can go back to the originator, which is the Mavericks team itself. So I think ticketing is going to get very interesting. I love what the NFL did with this year's ticket. That yes, it was digital entry, and people were like, oh, what about my commemorative ticket? Now they all have an NFT, right? It was the first Super Bowl to issue a commemorative NFT for everyone that attended the game. And so they'll always have that unless they choose to sell it. So I think ticketing is going to capture its fair share of this new technology. That's kind of number one for me. Even from the secure token side of the house, from a tokenity standpoint, I look at municipal stadiums and arenas as opportunity to fractionalize and sell. I mean, if you've got these cities sitting on these big debt burdens and these big assets, and they don't want to own them, but yet they are producing revenue and could earn yield for somebody like you and me. Hey, I love Orlando. I love the Magic, but the Magic don't own the arena. The city owns the arena. Does the city really want to be sitting on that asset or all that asset? And then, by the way, if we owned a piece of that asset, we're probably more likely to attend more events at that asset, because the more successful that asset is, the better the chance our dividend increases or our asset appreciates through that token. So just a personal way that I'm looking at it through a tokenity lens. And I'll just stop after this next one. Then you have things like, and I'd love to ask you a little bit more about this, just because we both kind of got the golf background, and that's Links DAO. So people that aren't familiar, again, with the ecosystem, there are these things called decentralized autonomous organizations. It's where a group of people come together. I mean, there was a group earlier this year that tried to buy a copy of the U.S. Constitution, and they basically, through the Constitution DAO, crowdsourced like $55 million. They got outbid by a really wealthy individual, but nonetheless, it was a fun exercise, again, a fun test. And now I come back to you and say, what do you think of Links DAO? And tell people what Links DAO is before you tell me what you think of it.
Yeah. Well, gosh, that was when you were talking about kind of asset tokenization and the potential impact on arenas. That's something I had not contemplated, which I think is really, really fascinating to think about. Touching on Links DAO, yeah, the decentralized autonomous organization kind of that has been enabled by all of this technology, and we're in the very, very early stages of this. And in golf, incredibly interesting project called Links DAO. It was started by a couple people, one Mike Dudas and another Jim Daly. Mike is kind of a veteran in the blockchain space. Jim had tremendous experience kind of in the more traditional media company role. He led a multi-billion-dollar organization. They had this idea of hey, can we put together through this DAO structure an entity that intends to go and remake, if you will, the culture of the game of golf? Can we make it more inclusive, more accessible, more fun, and utilize this technology platform to try to get there? And so in January, they came up with an idea and a roadmap called LinksDAO to do that. They went out and sold almost 6,000 NFTs to create the community, raised nearly $12 million. And now they're, barely 5 months in, and this incredible kind of working organization has evolved out of this idea, all being enabled by the underlying blockchain technology. So there's lots of projects like that, and there are more and more. Actually, there's efforts in the DAO space where communities are being formed to try to go buy, whether it's an NBA team or buy NFL teams, buy, football clubs overseas and around the world. It's a fascinating landscape to explore, all of which is kind of this possibility is being unlocked, by the underlying technology. And to that end, I do want to take a minute to touch on that underlying technology, because I think you're really good at kind of explaining this, through the asset tokenization lane. It's what is kind of happening there? What is that underlying technology? When we talk about an NFT, a non-fungible token, or a securitized token, what are some of the attributes that really make this different than what has come before it? I know you've touched on, the liquidity and the market that's there, the digital signature, which really allows you to claim ownership of something, in this definitive way in the digital landscape. But can you touch on a few of those? Because then I want to keep going with some of the ideas and the intersection in sports with this technology.
Yeah, well, again, it's really important that people understand that today none of the digital assets that are out there, Bitcoin, Ethereum, NFTs and others are regulated yet by the SEC. Okay, so we're gonna see regulation. I think the industry actually welcomes some regulation because once the guardrails are in place, then more people are going to be able to adopt it and use it and trust it, candidly. Although I trust math more than people, as people like to say in the space. That being said, security tokens are in fact regulated. And they are a digital layer over an existing asset. So the nice thing about security tokens is they tie back to a real world physical asset, whether it's a business, a building, a piece of land, something where value can be determined through audited financials, appraisals, comps, etc. So it's not. Security tokens are regulated, which is one of the things that we love about Tokequity. And when we're talking to owners, because they get scared, they hear blockchain, they think cryptocurrency, they think Bitcoin, they think this is going to be something that is going to cause them problems later on, when in fact it's not. It's just we're utilizing the technology that's available, and that technology automates everything. I mean, I'll give you a great example. If you have your owners and it's all been digitized and they've got smart contracts that say when they're going to get paid their dividends and their distributions and how they're going to get paid, it gets done literally by pressing a button, and everybody gets paid instantaneously. The settlement is instantaneous. Now let's go back to the Walt Disney Company, okay? Because I'm a shareholder, and guess what? They still mail me a dividend check twice a year. What is the raw cost and time to execute millions and millions and millions of dividend checks, get them in the mail, get the postage on them, get them to their shareholders, sign it, deposit it, cash it? I mean, oh my God, shoot me, right? The time and the money that goes into that is just. This is why it's going to be adopted, meaning the underlying technology is going to be adopted by everybody. You also talk about a number of use cases. So when we think of DeFi, and again, now I'm going to go down a little rabbit hole. So DeFi is like decentralized finance. It's where I just give you a very simple level. a whole bunch of people come together, they pool their money together, and then they loan that money out like a bank. But in this case, it's all set up through technology and protocol and algorithms. So a great example of what's going to happen in DeFi, and sports can pay attention to this. I think one of the earliest industries that's going to get crushed if they're not paying attention is insurance, right? Because what is insurance? At the end of the day, insurance, we all pay the same premiums based on our age, our demographic, our credit score, our driving record, right? There's nothing special about insurance because it's all fact based on the things that I just mentioned. So what are you really paying for? You're paying for a duck. You're paying for mayhem. You're paying for a good hand. You're paying for flow. I mean, you're paying 30% of your premium is going to advertising. That's it. Now, think about stripping away the advertising and paying a yield to the people that have loaned money to the pool that run the algorithms that then insure people behind it. Like, it's mind-boggling. Sorry for that rabbit hole, but it's where we're going.
It's fascinating. I think the real takeaway is that this technology has gotten robust and the adoption has gotten to the point where people are entrusting this for, high level kind of sacred financial transactions. That's kind of the level of the trust. Now, what's coming is kind of the regulation that's necessary to put the guardrails in place. And then I see sports, the cultural influences in this country and around the world, the sports and art and music. Those are the areas that continue to drive that adoption. So
sure. And think about young athletes. Let's just go back to golf for a second, because we're both so familiar with golf. Your major sports teams, your major leagues, you get drafted, you get a contract, you get guaranteed money day one, right? Where NFL draft's going on right now, right? Those guys that sign, hey, you're signing a 3-year deal, it's worth X, we're going to guarantee Y. It's like, it's a whole new day for you as an athlete. You go back to the young aspiring golfer, okay? And let's just put the Tiger Woods and Jordan Spieths of the world aside and get back to the best in class coming out of college this year. Do you know how much money they have on day one? Like zero. Now, they might be an All-American, they might have an agent, they might get a little something from one of the manufacturers, but for all intents and purposes, they're starting with zero. Now, let's just do this. Let's pretend I'm a 22-year-old, I'm coming out of college, I went to a great university, I wasn't All-American, but I believe in myself. And you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to tokenize myself or create an NFT of myself. And I'm going to go out there and say, here's the deal. I'm going to sell 25% of myself today for $5 million. And everybody that buys in today is going to get 25% of my earnings over the next 20 years, or however I set up the parameters, right? And now you have a claim on me as that golfer going forward. And if I'm a bust, I'm a bust. But you know what? Stocks go bust. Bonds become junk. So it's an investment opportunity. Wow. Or maybe you're an alumni of that school and you love that athlete. And that athlete is basically saying, I am willing to take $5 million today and give up 25% of tomorrow. Tomorrow could be $100 million over the course of that career. We don't know, but it's a different way to do things that you could never do before,
Yeah, and it's a global market, and hopefully kind of the regulation brings into focus that those kinds of opportunities aren't going to just be limited to accredited investors. That's, that it really opens the pool to anyone.
I mean, but Ryan, that drives me crazy. Accredited investors. I mean, this, you just hit an absolute nerve with me. Okay. So here's one for you. My 18-year-old son, okay, because he worked, he was getting stimulus checks, right? So my 18-year-old son can take his stimulus checks. He can go online to a sports book and he can bet it all away. He can go down to the Hard Rock Casino in Tampa and he can bet it all away, right? He can put it into a Robinhood account. He can buy Bitcoin through an exchange like Coinbase. He can buy Apple stock, but he's not an accredited investor, so he can't invest in that real estate project down the street. He can't invest in that self-storage business that's around the corner from him. He got a car from Mazda and the dealership is actually now tokenized. But he can't invest in that because he's not an accredited investor. It's like, wait a minute. those that are the least fortunate in this country can, pardon my French, piss away their money on a slot machine, no problem, can go throw all that money on the Super Bowl and lose it. But we're not worried about protecting them. But we must protect them from investing in a viable business opportunity. It's crazy. It's crazy. It's nonsense.
It is crazy, and that's hopefully, the scale, the engagement, and I think the entire industry has gotten organized and mature enough to have the appropriate kind of outreach to the regulators to make sure that the narrative is framed in a fair way, so that decisions that come down the pipeline are going to hopefully make sense in serving the mission of kind of democratizing access to all of this, which is fundamentally critical. I want to circle back. As you were sharing the idea around the professional golfer, which I think is another one fascinating to think about. I was thinking something similar, as the NFL draft is just happening this week. It's like, what does that look like in 4 or 5 years? When you start to overlay blockchain technology and fan tokens and fan engagement into an ecosystem like the NFL draft, like it's just it's mind blowing to think about, and it's going to be so fascinating to see how it evolves. And it's going to happen quickly, but how it evolves over time with, rather than the teams and the owners kind of making decisions on behalf of the fans and the players. Like, it's just going to totally remake that ecosystem of the draft, and then ultimately, I mean, it's going to carry through to all of sports. As I was thinking about, like, beyond that, if I were to kind of roll back to like today, who's really kind of wading into these waters in a way that I think is really interesting and gives a glimpse into the future, I would go back to a team like the Golden State Warriors. Okay, they, when presented with the options of, do we go kind of fan token route or do we go NFT collectible route? I think the way they are going about it is they're kind of writing the playbook, if you will, where in 2021 they released several editions of NFT collectibles and raised $2 million. They also made sure that there was a philanthropic component to these. They chose, I think, collectibles over the fan token route just yet because collectibles are something we all understand. That is, I buy this thing because it's scarce and I'm a fan of the league, and I believe there's just some intrinsic value in that actual item. So they're going this collectibles route first. Now they do have, maybe what comes next is then the fan token side, where you start to get into unlocking and engaging the fans to make more in-depth decisions about the clubs and the operations of the club. I think that's a long road. So if I was a club or a sports executive kind of listening to this and I have no idea, where to even start, where to even look to start learning how to start, I would point to, what the Golden State Warriors are doing, and the NBA for that matter.
Sure, NBA, I mean, leading the way.
Yeah, the NBA with their global, I think that's an important subject or topic here too, is that, these marketplaces that get created, they're global.
Yes, instantaneously global.
It's instantaneously global. They don't run, from 9 to 5 on Eastern time. They're always open. They're highly liquid. And so the NBA got in front of that by becoming a global brand. And now here they are kind of starting with collectibles. Teams are starting in with collectibles, and eventually they're going to wade into fan tokens. The NFL, just within the last, 3 or 4 months, they went from stating that they were not going to engage. They couldn't engage at all in any of this. They couldn't allow, Cryptocurrency exchanges could not be sponsors. They will completely pivoted. They've now started to relax some of that to where not only can they be sponsors, they're now wading into collectibles themselves. They've signed a deal. 13 teams have signed a deal with Socios to start exploring fan tokens. It's literally changing, each and every week. There's a new development here. And I find all of that fascinating, and it's all kind of coming on the heels of the space that you're working.
As much as I also as I love the new developments, I also love the list of people that we could create the list of I was wrong, right? How many people said this has no utility, this has no future, there is no opportunity. We go through banks, we go through investors, we go through teams, we go through leagues. I mean, so many people. And again, I was a skeptic early on, but you just got to own up and say it, right? Like, I didn't understand it. I didn't pay attention to it. I was wrong. Thank you. Now let's move forward, because we're all going to be using this as we go. And, the interesting thing you mentioned about collectibles versus fan tokens, I think the collectibles are an intelligent way to lead, because you said the person that has it feels that there's some intrinsic value there. To be determined over the long term how much value is tied to which NFT and which collectible, and how rare is it, and how does this play out. But when people historically collected things, they end up in their attic or their basement, or where are your baseball cards from the mid 80s? Like, I don't know. But the great thing about digital, I don't need you to come over and go into my basement to look through a shoebox of baseball cards, right? Because now we've all got it here on our phone. The fan tokens are interesting, but you've got to get to a point where you create great utility for them, right? Like today, it's like, okay, if I own, I'm making it up, 10,000 fan tokens for Manchester United, that gives me 10,000 votes on what song they play. Like, you can do that through social media channels. Like, I'm not getting great utility out of that. I don't own any part of the team. You're going to throw me a 10% discount on merchandise. I already get that as a season ticket. So again, we need to think about how do we create great utility around those fan tokens so that people want to own as many as possible to get the greatest amount of benefit from it.
That's I think where the regulation clarity, as soon as there's clarity, it's going to literally explode, because think back, the Green Bay Packers. You can go buy ownership shares in the Green Bay Packers, but the amount of utility that the team can put into the ownership of that share is non-existent.
That's right.
If they pack in too much utility, then all of a sudden it becomes a security, and you have to be an accredited investor to buy it. So it's more, it's talked about as you have this ownership share, but it's really still a collectible. But at some point, when those guardrails, there's some clarity there, it's just going to spread so fast, because fandom will go to another level. You can not only be cheering for the team, you literally could have an ownership stake that has some utility and some actual rights and access, some IRL, some in real life benefits that come with it. But then it's tradable. It has intrinsic value that hopefully, as the team does better and performs better, your share of the team becomes more valuable.
Yep.
So
sports is such a great use case, because there's so much loyalty there, right? There's so much loyalty in sports to teams, and to some degree to players, but definitely to teams, right? I was born and raised in Rochester, New York. My first professional football game was a Bills game. I'm a diehard Bills fan to this day, despite the ending of the last season in Kansas City, and oh my God, and 4 lost Super Bowls in a row. Like, I could take you down memory lane. Don't need to do that, but you have the loyalty, which again, if I'm not plugging Toquidity here, but simply saying from a security token standpoint, right? If you love the restaurant down the street, and I am the proprietor of the restaurant down the street, one of the things I would consider doing, now knowing what I know about network effects, is I would actually sell, call it 10% of my restaurant to my 500 most loyal customers. Why? Because instead of coming there once a month, they're going to come there once a week. When they're going to take their friends out to dinner, they're going to take them to this restaurant. You know why? Because they're an owner now. And when you own something, it's kind of like being a fan of a team. You feel a sense of loyalty. You have a lot more passion. Your willingness to participate or, buy, multiple times again and again. It's inherent with ownership, period. So it's a great way as we, head towards, the exit here, to be thinking about how things are structured and set up. Let my customers own a piece of this. Let my fans own a piece of this. Let the people that believe in me own a piece of me, and then they will reap the rewards and the success of my career down the road.
Yeah, 100%. That is, it's nothing short of a paradigm shift, and it is coming at all of us like a freight train. And
Dude, we haven't even touched it. I mean, it's 47 minutes and we haven't even touched on the metaverse yet. We haven't even touched on sports in the metaverse. We haven't touched on brands in the metaverse. We haven't talked about, people are like, oh, metaverse, I don't go to the metaverse. I'm 65. I'm like, dude, you're dead. It's going to be here for the next 200 years. Like, stop. Nike. How much does it cost to manufacture a pair of Nike shoes? Let's just say it's a $200 pair of shoes. Let's just say they cost, making this up, $38 to actually manufacture them before all the marketing fees and distribution fees and blah, 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 blah. But $38. Now, I'm not going to see you this weekend, but I might see you in the metaverse. And my avatar is going to have a kick-ass pair of Nikes. And those pair of Nikes might not have cost $200. They might have only cost $20. But guess how much they cost to make? Like nothing. I mean, think about how many companies don't even have the metaverse built into their current stock prices and what they can generate in revenue from that and the lack of cost to produce that. I mean, it's just, again, you take down sports, where's the first metaverse country club? Yes, they've got some cool putt-putt games. My kids play it. They kicked my rear this past weekend. It was actually a lot of fun. But I mean, that's where we're going to go. You're going to have full setups. I'm going to be like, man, I'm going to meet you there. We're going to play golf this weekend. Facts.
Oh, the fandom, just our entire experience, and you'll have an IRL experience, and you will have a digital experience.
Right. I'm a digital season ticket holder. I can't make it to Mavs games. I got a great big screen. It's even better when I put on my, Quest headset and I'm able to sit, front row.
Yeah, there's so much. I mean, we kind of skimmed across the top of a lot of different lanes in the ecosystem, but you could just spend hours and hours and hours trying to cover all the subjects. They're just infinitely fascinating. The metaverse is another one, and we'll definitely have to at some point circle back around and do this again to take a deeper dive into what that looks like. I just one note, not to throw a whole bunch of jargon out there for anybody that might be new in the space, but if you want to see or think about something crazy in the metaverse, just look at what Yuga Labs is doing with the Bored Ape Yacht Club and CryptoPunks. And this weekend, they're starting to mint land in the metaverse. And just watch the headlines that come out of what happens in that space over the weekend. It's literally going to blow people's minds with the scale of what they're doing in this space. It's out there, but infinitely fascinating. I got one eye on the clock. I want to be sensitive to your time, Andy. It is the sports and crypto, so
we got it.
You have a fantastic perspective here on a lot of different things. But I'd love to hear a couple just quick hitters. Like, what professionally? You mentioned the Buffalo Bills. Are they your favorite professional sports team?
Yeah, they're definitely my favorite sports team. Again, first professional event as a child, as a 7-year-old, going to Rich Stadium. It was freezing. And my dad wanted to leave because the Bills were losing. And I told him, I said, no way, we're not leaving. We're not going. And they scored late and they got the onside kick and they threw a Hail Mary. And, I'm dating myself here because I'm almost 48. But for years, that Bills highlight was on Alcoa's fantastic finishes. And I love reminding my dad that now there are literally a couple 100,000 people in Buffalo that swear they were there that day. I promise you, we were the last 2,000 left in the stands at that moment. So yeah, I love the Bills. The Magic, I was a season ticket holder for years during their run with Dwight Howard. And, I know a lot of people that work there, but it's been really hard the last decade. The ownership doesn't seem to want to put a winner on the floor, and they just seem to want to milk the revenue share. And it's disheartening because I love pro basketball that much and I love the Magic that much, but they need to right that ship. What else? What's great for people that are new to crypto is a couple of things. Number one, not just crypto, but people like you and I mean, that we're doing our own thing. We're out there, we're hustling. There's a great podcast called My First Million, and they cover all topics, right? They cover entrepreneurship and how people got their start and their success. And sometimes they, are talking at a macro level, and sometimes they're in the weeds on a certain topic. So it's definitely worth scanning. I think Sean and Sam do a great job with that, the way they riff off of one another and their guests. And by the way, they only started like in 2019, and they're up to like 300 episodes, but definitely worth your audience's time. And Bit Digest comes out every single day. You can subscribe to it. It's just an email, comes into your inbox, but it gives you like the top 20 things that happened in crypto the day before, including kind of, prices on the biggest currencies that are out there, but what governments are doing and what companies are doing. What did Goldman Sachs just do? What happened in the metaverse? I'm sure there'll be a story on Monday about, what happened, with the minting over the weekend of land in the metaverse. So Bit Digest is a quick plug for people that want a quick email hit every single day, and a great podcast is My First Million. We were talking about books before, and I
do want to know what, and this is something a lot about. What's your favorite sporting event? You got the Bills and the Magic as the teams.
Sporting event.
In real life sporting event, which one is kind of can't miss, or that you've enjoyed the most?
Well, I've been to the Ryder Cup as a fan. It's as good as it gets. Ryder Cup, Kentucky Derby, U.S. Open tennis. And the reason why I use Phoenix Open is pretty good too. But we'll stick with golf, Ryder Cup. The thing is, these are great social experiences, right? So you can bring your spouse, and there's so many things going on, and you can eat and drink, and you can watch, and you can participate. They're just such unique experiences. So got to do the Derby, got to do U.S. Open tennis, you got to do the Ryder Cup. I would do all three of those honestly before my next Super Bowl. Not that I'm going to a Super Bowl anytime soon, but I've been fortunate enough to be to a Super Bowl with you. As a matter of fact, I think we went when it was San Diego. It was you and me and Linus, and the Raiders were playing the Buccaneers.
That's
Linus
right.
Linus still talks about this to this day. Okay, so remember we were making fun of insurance companies before. Well, yeah. I still love great ads, and I love the progressive ads, and I am that person, right? I'm the guy that now sits down and I let out the sigh because my knees are cracking as I sit down, and I'm also that guy that's at the parking lot saying, okay. The minute we're 4 minutes into the fourth quarter, we're going to leave. We're going to go out this exit. This is where the transportation is going to be. And everyone's like, yo, dude, the game hasn't even started yet. What are you talking about? And we were at that Super Bowl, and the Bucks had the game in hand. And I said, Linus, let's go. And he goes, dude, we're at the Super Bowl. And I go, dude, I am not getting behind 60,000 people for that shuttle out of here. We are out of here. And you turn to me and you're like, yep, that's AO. Let's go.
Let's go. Contingency planning. It's
planning. Always.
We met. I remember meeting Joe Namath during that.
Oh my God, that's right.
And he was thoroughly enjoying himself during. It was classic. Well, Andy, this has been amazing. Thank you so much for got everything. As I mentioned before, I can't overstate the impact and influence you've had on my life. Candidly, Andy, but for you, it would have played out very differently. And I'm so grateful that it professionally and all the experiences I've had have happened the way they have, and you had a huge role in that in so many different ways. So this was a fascinating conversation. I'm so grateful for you to take the time to do it. And yeah, let's do this again.
Yeah, it's been a lot of fun. I'm looking forward to your 200th episode. Any other major milestone episodes you want to bring me back? I'd love to be back. And I appreciate all the kind words towards me. But let's be clear, you earned everything. I mean, you pushed me just as much, I think, as I maybe have pushed you along the way. So I consider this, reciprocity at its finest. Wish you the best of luck as you move forward with sports and crypto. I think the future is limitless. I know we're going to be in touch plenty. I know your parents live right up the road, so look forward to grabbing a beer and seeing you soon.
I love it. Thanks, Andy.